Sure, let's go. I don't know. I don't know if Germany declared war one. I'm not sure what the history is on that. I assume that America
I don't recall either.
would have declared war on the next day on Japan and everybody who had ever been associated with Japan. So I assume it would have been on the entire axis.
Well, everyone went to work, and it was from then on, and women haven't quit working since.
Well, that's my next thing. Women in the workforce. How was?
Yeah.
I mean, did you go work, or I know you didn't serve at all.
No.
Because of family.
Yeah.
It's partly because of the family, but I had
You
had
were
an
older,
ice cream
too.
store. Yeah, I was probably on the upper edge of the ones, you see, that were going. But we had this ice cream store, and before the war started, we had gotten a contract with Roar Aircraft Corporation. So we were in a vital industry at the time. We were feeding all of the fellows working down at Roar.
Right.
And they just automatically granted us a deferment.
So if you had been, working at the gas station.
You'd have been
In
gone.
spite of the family.
Yeah.
Later.
I probably would.
You wouldn't have been.
Later on.
Yeah, because you were about 28 or 29 years old then.
Yeah, we were only 20 years old.
Yeah.
What about with the family notwithstanding? Okay.
Yeah.
Family made a difference.
Yeah, we had 3 kids. And to go back to the Japanese, for just an aside, you might be interested in this. Pop came home and after Pearl Harbor, and he put a loaded revolver. We had a little wall safe in our wall safe, and he told me and a big stack of dollar bills, and he told me that if anything happened, if there were any parachutists or any ships coming in, I was to put the boys in the car and I was to head for my mother's and father's ranch in Arizona.
Leave all that money for me?
No, not to worry about you. You told me not to worry about you.
I know.
No, don't try to find me. Don't think about me. You just go.
I know, but the money and the gun were for you and your protection and your livelihood over in Arizona or wherever.
Yeah. So
was that kind of paranoid?
Yes. We didn't know what was going to happen. They might, the same fleet that bombed, they suffered almost no damage on that bomb. And they could come onto the coast, and we expected them to.
They could have, if they'd known. They didn't know that.
They didn't know what?
They didn't know that we were wide open.
So wasn't there were bases in San Diego, or they were minor installations?
Well, there were some bases, yes, but most of the warships were out at Hawaii. They destroyed practically the whole blooming Navy.
They could have come with assault ships and ships. They could have landed on any of the beaches. Encinitas, Carlsbad, up and down, Santa Barbara, all over.
Why was the military in Hawaii in the first place? For a show of strength against that sort of invasion?
You see, Japan was already at war against a lot of nations around them. And they knew that Japan wanted to extend the war. And they didn't dream that they could come out and attack the fleet at Pearl Harbor.
Undetected.
Yes, undetected. And so most of the fleet was right there, just in that harbor. Protected area, you see. Nobody could get to them. And they were going to protect the coast of the United States by preventing this armada of Japanese. And they just, it's almost unbelievable now with the communication systems that we've got. They couldn't do it now, I'm sure.
Well, I watched quite a few of the shows recently on TV a month ago about all this. It was very bizarre. It's very difficult for me to comprehend that sort of attack because I grew up with America was untouchable, absolutely untouchable.
Well, but Americans were also honorable, and they wouldn't make a sneak attack like that. I don't believe.
No, we wouldn't do the first strike.
Call them out
first.
Yeah, I would say.
Call them out, right? Like, hey, buddy.
Yeah. Well, now we've got all these satellites, you see, and spy satellites.
Very difficult to
make a move.
That's it. Okay.
Yep. See, we're blinking on there right now. That might have just shut off.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Is it blinking? Yeah, well, that means that.
What does it say in there?
It's getting near the end. It's 58. Okay. Next time we need to get you in more full. I turned it a little bit.
Well, I'm not, I'm just a voice here.
Well, not
I'm just,
necessarily.
I'm just-
Okay.
I'm just-
Got mixed up on that.
Here we go, tape number 2. Continuing.
Okay.
And all this we're gonna be able to put on just one big tape.
That's right, on the VCR tape. Hopefully.
So, mid-40s. Roosevelt, war, women, working, patriotism. What happened? The women were working? Was that just
Well, they went
an
to work
economic
in the
necessity, I guess?
No, it was in the war effort because the men were away, and the men were in the Army or the Navy or the Air Force, or they were off in the CVs. What didn't they the
Yeah.
CVs?
Yes, but that was more after the war, I think, the Reconstruction, wasn't it?
No,
Were
they were during the war.
They were the civilian battalions that
Yeah.
were
They were during the war.
doing work, making the bases on the islands and repairing ships.
And women went to work in aircraft factories.
Right.
Did anything they could do.
And there was that, I mean, is that almost a blanket statement that women worked in the war effort exclusively?
Just about. Well, everything was a war effort in those days.
Yes, it was
Everything.
all gauged toward the war.
Everything.
Even food production, of course, mainly perhaps food production, but automobiles had quit entirely, you know. There were no automobiles made for civilian use. All of the productivity of the automobile factories went toward the war.
After 1941, there were no more automobiles. 41 or 42, I forget which. And even we had shoe rationing for kids, for little kids. That was horrible.
Yeah, and it became where you couldn't get any leather. They were all made out of paper and cardboard.
Beef was rationed. Butter was rationed.
But nobody complained.
Oh, they complained bitterly.
Well, yes, I think a lot of people complained, but they didn't complain enough to really do something about it, you know. I mean, you'd complain if you had to wear shoes that didn't fit you and felt bad, you know, but you kept on doing it because it was a good thing that you were
working for. Or you go to your grandmother and say, don't you have a shoe coupon I could use?
Yeah, coupons for everything. Sugar coupons.
Had a rationing board. You set up a rationing board. You'd go and get your coupons, gasoline coupons.
Now, did you buy those coupons?
No, they
were allowed to you on the basis of need.
They just gave them to you.
Yeah, but you had to spend money. They didn't. All they did was go
allow
along
you to
with
buy.
the money.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it was just permission to buy something. Otherwise, the stores weren't allowed to sell gasoline to anybody that came in. The shoe stores or practically anything, I guess.
And this was all business. It was
Yeah.
regulated.
Yeah.
As far as I know, every business was regulated in some way or the other. Many businesses were converted to war effort.
So, it seems like in the 30s there was some very intense social programs, and then in the 40s, that sounds more intense than anything that ever happened in the 30s with the coupons and the government telling you what you can and you can't buy.
That was just for the war effort.
The exigency of the war.
We didn't, no one knew how long it would take, what it would take, what turn things would take.
But the attitude was go get Hitler.
Go get hero first. That was our.
Georgia was the admiral of the fleet, I think, wasn't he?
Yeah.
In Japan.
Yeah.
And so he was the big boogie.
That was the first priority.
They wanted revenge for that terrible, deceitful attack.
Now, did the economic turn that the war produced begin during the war, or was it afterwards when the new prosperity began?
It was afterwards. Because we were still under rationing with gasoline and tires.
Yes, for quite a long time.
For a while after the war. I don't remember just how long, but it was for a period after the war. Until we could begin to get geared up production again. And then there was all the rebuilding of Europe that was going to start taking precedent also.
Right. What was the attitude towards Germany? were they a country who had been victimized by a dictator, or a country who had walked hand in hand with their dictator?
Yeah.
I think they were behind Hitler all the way.
Yeah, they walked
Most
hand
of
in
them
hand
were.
with him.
One special I saw on public television said that if Hitler had died in 1938, he would have gone down in history as the greatest statesman ever, as the man who single-handedly brought Germany out of the same depression the whole world was in the 30s.
Well, there again, he did it by building up for war.
Right.
And he did. That's absolutely true, he did.
Create the prosperity of everybody having jobs, you see.
And he did a lot of good things for Germany before the war, before he began to think he could take over all Germanic-speaking people in the world, plus a few French-speaking too.
English and everybody else.
Now, with the Jewish question that was going on in Germany, do you remember when you heard what was going on there?
We didn't hear much about
No,
that.
I don't.
Until after, perhaps?
It was afterwards. It was after the war.
I don't think we were aware. You see, the newspapers are the only way that we can get information. And I suspect that they were pretty much under control for a long time.
I don't think the government may have known, but we didn't. We were not aware of what was happening, like at Dachau and
Right.
things like that. We were not aware of that.
So part of the American war effort was not to save the Jews or to save the...
I don't remember
No.
that having any part
No,
of it.
no.
But
It was to stop Hitler containing.
So it wasn't so much a war of liberation for the Poles or the Czechs, but a war of stopping Hitler. You see the distinction I'm drawing between
Yeah.
stopping him
Yeah.
or saving the people that he's
Well,
plundered, or both.
That both. It was both. It was both. It was a horrible thing when he marched into Poland and Czechoslovakia and Austria, just engulfed them all. And yet on the newsreel that we saw, people were welcoming him.
In Austria.
Yeah,
and
Austria.
And parts of Poland,
Yeah.
but Warsaw, there was no welcome in Warsaw. Warsaw was razed.
Oh yes, that was a horrible.
Warsaw was destroyed.
But then the Russians were coming on the other side too,
Right.
and they did a lot worse things than the Germans ever did.
Right.
And that wasn't told very much.
Now, that's another tangent there. When Stalin, Uncle Joe, right?
Yeah.
How did that terminology ever come around?
Well, that was Roosevelt's.
That sounds so morbid.
He could handle Uncle Joe.
Yeah.
Oh yes, he prided himself that he could get concessions from Uncle Joe.
So.
And it was just the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uncle Joe twisted him.
But the Russians were almost a cautious ally, so to speak, during that war.
Cautious.
I don't remember them. They were on our side, but I don't remember any momentous things that they did.
They took.
Benefit from whatever we would give them.
Right. Right.
They took everything. They just were insatiable.
Right.
And all they wanted from us was what we could supply them.
And everything.
You think it was the political necessity of the time to ally with Russia?
Well, that was partly Roosevelt.
Right. Well, to be united against the
Yeah.
Axis.
Yeah. Yes, that was supposed to have been expedient. But
To help surround and
Hitler.
at least lip service of preventing Hitler from spreading out to the east and blocking him on both sides.
Now, immediately after that, you were still with Wilson Ice Cream, or
Well, what year?
right after the war,
changed.
the last half of the 40s.
Changed some things. Right after the war, we had an idea when we started this little ice cream store that we'd have a dozen ice cream stores in San Diego in the area. And we knew that we should have our own plant. So we had a lot right near, not too far from our ice cream store. And we built a new ice cream store with a completely equipped wholesale ice cream factory in the back of it.
Right on Davidson?
Yeah, between Davidson and 3rd Avenue. It wasn't on Davidson, it was down on F Street.
F Street.
Yes, the building is still there.
Right.
And we bought the best and newest ice cream truck, just like the big companies in town had. And we started branching out and getting different places to buy our ice cream, because our ice cream was richer than the ordinary ice cream. We made it a 14% butterfat ice cream. Nita Frank was also in business at that time. He had his place in there.
He started after we did.
And ours was just a little better than everybody else's. And we got quite a few good customers in San Diego, including a drugstore on the corner of 3rd and Broadway, which sold a lot of ice cream. But the guy in the drugstore was just about as stubborn as I was, because the unions had, we had been stepping on pages and quality and so on, cutting a few of their customers out. And so the unions got busy and came out and told me I had to join the union. And I said, well, don't talk to me. My men are out there. Go talk to them.
How would you join? How would you as an...
Well, that's just the point. I told them, no, I don't have anything to do with it. You talk to the men and get them to do it.
See, they wanted him to say.
So make the guys join. Yeah, that's their tactic, you see. They put pressure on the employer and make him. But my guys were getting paid more than the union fellows were. And they wouldn't even talk to him. Well, one thing led to another, and they put us on the blacklist,
That's...
And
unions, 1940.
yes, and they blacklisted and picketed my customers, including the Standard drugstore at the corner of 3rd and Broadway. But he was just as stubborn as I, and he said, go to hell. And he kept buying the ice cream, and we kept delivering him the ice cream. But they put on tremendous pressure in so many different ways when they wanted to, because they control so many others. They did then. I don't think they have the power now that they did then.
But I don't. What kind of union would that have been? Just a restaurant worker?
It was a Teamsters union. Just the guy that driving the truck was the one they were after. And they followed our truck. We had 2 trucks really. One was a smaller delivery truck.
Just the truck driver. They were trying to unionize the whole
Well,
plant. We had 20 employees.
But honey, it was the Teamsters union
Yes.
that the members of the plant would join the Teamsters union.
Even the guy that adds the sugar into the mix?
Everybody, yeah.
Industrial worker, I guess that's what that would be.
The guy that would scour out the ice cream cans, everything.
So I just said, well, I'm not going to surrender to you guys. I don't like the way that you do business. And so one of the big dairies in Los Angeles came down and said, well, do you want to sell? And I said, sure, I'll sell. So we sold out, made a little bit of money on the thing, kept the retail store in Chula Vista and leased it out then later on to other people. But we gave up the wholesale manufacture of ice cream. Went to Europe, took a vacation.
Do you think that was typical of what was going on in the country with union organizing at the time?
I expect it was. I'm sure it was, yes.
Oh, it was.
Because they were just goons, I started to tell you about them following the truck around, and I had a tough little driver in the truck, and he wouldn't surrender to any of them. I don't think he carried a gun. He carried a big stick.
Carried a baseball bat.
And at one time, they were following him very closely, and he tried to back into him to smash up their car.
With your truck?
Yeah, with my truck.
Yeah, but you had told him to turn his wheels into him.
Yeah.
Because they'd run alongside of him.
It was that intense.
Oh yes,
yeah.
they were bound. Well, you see, quality and ages and
they were the big dairies in town.
big dairies in San Diego were saying, this guy's getting some of our business.
Yeah.
You guys, union people, do something about it. And they did.
So it wasn't,
Put us out of business.
I mean, they weren't doing this with any the ideas of the union would be to protect the worker and this, that, and the other.
No, all they want is the money that they get from those guys.
And they were just hired thugs.
Well, that's the way they acted. Whether they were actually hired thugs or not, I don't know, but the actions.
Well, at that very same time,
Thugs,
that very same time that was going on, Convair in San Diego was undergoing strike. And some of the holdouts, the people who would go to work and cross the picket line, were having fire bombs, stink bombs thrown into their homes. And they were being followed and just generally harassed. And then we were going through that. And at the foot of our hill, over there where we used to live, we had a big sign, R.W. Wilson, and a big logo, it was a diamond W, a W and a diamond. And Pop took that down because he didn't want anyone knowing where we were living, anyone casually going by. And
Wilson, that's that
throw
scary.
a stink bomb up on our hill. So that was just a precaution.
Well, we then were discouraged with the ice cream business, and
It discouraged you for a lot of business in general.
we sold out, but we kept the little store and leased it out to another fellow that came in and operated as a business, paid us rent on it, and kept the store, and it stayed as an ice cream farm. I mean, he still made his own ice cream in the farm because it had everything necessary.
Now, at that time, then, coming out of the 40s and into the 50s, was there a lot of money a lot of low interest rates and a lot of money for entrepreneurs to borrow the money to build up a little shop like that?
I don't remember what interest rates were.
I think around 7%, 6 and 7% was sort of normal for years and years.
I think that's probably right. Yes, about 6% was pretty much normal, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But after the war, there, I mean, was the country started to reap those benefits of the military buildup and
Oh, I think so, and it was at this time that I decided I was going to get into another business where I didn't have to hire employees, where I could just do the work myself. And I checked with several people and had friends in the insurance business. They encouraged me, so I set up a little insurance agency in the former office in this building where the ice cream was made. It was a little separate office, and I just kept it for a while. And then later on, we bought the place where your dad now has the insurance agency.
Didn't you used to be way down at the end of 3rd Avenue in the building?
No.
Not 3rd Avenue, E Street. Or H Street, didn't some?
No, I think we always were in that area near 3rd and E Street. I don't remember another office that we had. We had we ran our catering business during the war. We fed all the workers on a roar, during the war, before we got in the ice cream business.
That was 3rd and Center.
And that was at 3rd and
Center
Street, which is where there's a new shopping center down there now.
Right.
But it had been a Chevrolet agency, and we bought the building and operated the catering business from the back. We were in that business for 3.5 years.
Okay. So we go into the 50s, right? And you have 3 boys, and the country is booming. My understanding is that decade, isn't it?
It was in 50, yes, it was in 1950 when we went to Europe for the first time.
That must have been quite a luxury at the time.
Oh, yeah.
You just saw the business.
Yes, yes. And I had not been in the war, and there was a kind of a feeling that I had really done my duty, like so many of my friends had. And I don't know what I expected to do, but anyway, we decided to go over to Europe. And we bought a little Austin automobile.
To a British car.
Yeah, took delivery of it over there.
Was Europe just destroyed and
Well, parts of it were just
was
just awful.
Had Russia already claimed it's part of Germany and Berlin? Well, that was all divvied up right after the war.
Yeah.
But were they open for travel?
No,
No.
you had to get special permit.
For all the Czechoslovakia, all that didn't happen until the
For all
60s. But for Germany and Berlin,
we didn't go into Berlin.
We stayed pretty much
In the western
France
part.
and the Netherlands and that area along there.
We went to Austria, to Vienna,
Yes.
and we had to get a special
And we were in
army permit to travel one certain road.
we were in Cologne, which is right near Germany.
Yeah, but remember we had to get a military permit to go on that one road, that one military road into Vienna from, was it Salzburg? Where was it? It was on the Danube River. We crossed from Germany across this bridge into this little town, and we saw Bill and Mary Prey. He was a provost marshal for this town, the American provost marshal.
Well,
The head of the military police.
military detachment in that area.
And we had a little gray paper, I remember, like a passport with our pictures on it. And we had to go on this one road into Vienna. Vienna was divided like Berlin. And we couldn't stop. We were to go straight in, and we went into the American sector. And then from there, we took a tour, a city tour. They took us around and showed us into the different military zones of Vienna. But everything was so bad. Food was short. And in Germany and Cologne and Frankfurt and those big cities, they've been so terribly bombed. Nasty, you can't believe.
Streets still filled with
Just
bricks and just
rubble
rubble in
and-
many places.
And
4 years after the war.
And it was such a humongous job that they were just doing what was necessary to get transportation going to try to keep food distribution. And people were still actually living under the rubble in the basements of these buildings.
Is Britain still bombed out too?
Oh, yes.
Yes, I should say so.
And food was shorter in Britain than it was in Germany.
Was your status as an American welcome?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Yes. Every place. Every place. Even in Germany, everywhere.
Well, we had a time getting back into Germany from.
We had bought.
the-
We had purchased 2 anniversary clocks in Germany. They're these perpetual motion clocks
The
with
glass dome.
and with the glass dome that
Yeah,
goes
yeah,
on.
it goes up.
And we got 2 of them, one for ourselves and one for a friend of ours. And as we were going, checked out of Germany in the afternoon, going into the Sudetenland. No, I mean into into France. We were going.
Oh, yeah,
The
northern
Ruhr,
France,
the Ruhr section.
Okay.
And we were going to go into France, and the German, it was the French, wouldn't let us in. The French wouldn't let us in. Saturday afternoon, we cashed all our German marks,
We didn't have it.
and we didn't have a mark to our name, and they made us go back. The French made us go back. And because of these 2 clocks, they thought we were profiteering.
Sure.
And so here it is, Saturday afternoon late like this. We find it at a little hotel, and they had a little courtyard for us to keep our car, because that was very important to find a place where your car would be safe
Off the
at
street,
night. And they had a little courtyard, walled in. We just went in, registered, went to the little dining room, had dinner, and went to bed. Just as though we were rich. And the next morning came time to check out. Pop says, no dinero, no marks, and
No money.
no money.
Couldn't give it.
Then there was a little confusion, and then he finally says, I have coffee, I have cigarettes. Ooh!
Like that.
We traded a can of coffee and some cigarettes. It was nice lodging.
For about $10 worth of night meals. That was one of
We were
those.
the profiteers.
Interesting.
You really were the profiteers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
course, yeah.
yeah.
We had taken a lot of cigarettes and a lot of coffee over there because we knew it was very short.
And 1 cigarette would be a tip. And people were just crazy to get American cigarettes. And to
Sounds
give,
so
and
strange.
to give them a package of cigarettes. I just about died.
Mm.
Just unreal. It's hard to realize.
Yeah, it is. It sounds bizarre. Putting your blue jeans and same thing with
Yeah,
blue jeans
In
in
Russia,
Russia.
yeah. And white shirts.
Or the white undershirts they probably like.
Well, they used to like white broadcloth shirts. I don't know what they like now. Probably t-shirts with all sorts of logos. I don't know.
Levi's.
Yeah, Levi's.
Okay, we